About 6 months ago, God gave me a vision for this series. And there was a phrase that just kept going over and over in my mind. And it's this, that when we get a clear vision of the there and then, it'll fill us with hope in the here and now. So man, I want to welcome you. Whether you are walked into church today for the 400th time or the first time, that's my prayer. That's my prayer for you. That's my prayer for me. Is that in this series that God would renew our vision, give us a clear vision of the there and then that would be so compelling that it would fill us with hope in the here and now. One of the points that I want to make is that this life that you're living, that there's more to you than this life. Exponentially more. There's a quote I read the other day that puts it this way: visualize a measuring tape extending from Earth to the farthest star. Our stay here is but a hairline almost invisible to the length of the tape. Strictly speaking, no distance can be compared to eternity. No matter how endless we visualize eternity to be, our conception is never endless enough. That there's more to you than this life. That relatively speaking, what you're experiencing right now, what you're living right now, what you're feeling right now, what you're tasting right now, what you're seeing right now, what you're doing right now is small in comparison to what lies ahead. And what lies ahead is heaven. And so today I want to start with an illustration of an important part of heaven that I don't think we talk enough about. So for some of you who've heard this story just recently, I apologize, but bear with me. You won't believe it, but in March, I went to Halifax, Nova Scotia and watched the National Basketball Championships. And it just so happens that my son Lucas plays on the University of Calgary Dinos. And point being, anyways, Calgary went all the way through and they won the national championship. So I'm sitting there in the Scotiabank Center in Halifax, Nova Scotia. The game ends and I'm there with my son Gabe. And I went to high five Gabe, but he was already gone. He was on the floor. The ushers led him on the floor. He was celebrating with the team. Kind of a cool moment. So Calgary won the national championship, and Lucas was there celebrating with his teammates, and I sat. Went on the floor quickly, gave Lucas a big hug, then I went back to my seat, and I sat there. And Sportsnet was there interviewing all the players, and I sat. And then they went and they started to cut down the netting around the basket, and I sat. And I sat there for like a long time, like 45 minutes, an hour 15, an hour and a half, and the whole team went into the locker room. I'm like, yeah, woo! And then I'm there, and the whole arena is empty, and I'm sitting on my seat. So at some point, about 90 minutes after the game ended, I texted Lucas and Gabe. I'm like, hey guys, are you going to come out of the locker room pretty soon? And they were like, Dad, we've been back at the hotel for like a half an hour. Cool. So cool being old, you know? So I just said, awesome. So I said, man, I hope you have a great time celebrating with your teammates tonight. See you tomorrow. And Lucas texted me back right away. He said, Dad, me and Gabe have been talking. We were hoping that like the three of us could go celebrate. And then after that, we can go celebrate with their teammates. And so I said, obviously, I said no. I said I wanted to go watch TV in my hotel room and said, no, I didn't say that. So we went out. Actually to a restaurant in downtown Halifax. If you ever go to Halifax, talk to me. I want to give you directions to that restaurant. It's called the Sicilian. Donair's Pizza and Subs, like my kind of restaurant right there. And I had a Donair flavored calzone, like 5,000 calories of delicious. It was amazing. But for me, obviously, the night was way more than food. I got to sit there with two of my boys. And we're talking about the game, and while we're talking about the national championship game, the highlights of the national championship game are playing on a TV in the background, and we're talking about the past and the present and the future and dreams and love and family, and it was amazing. Some kind of funny happened on the way there. Actually, we were walking on the way to the restaurant, and we passed by this pub, and there was a young guy standing there with two girls. And as we passed by, he yells at Lucas, nice medal, man. What you got to know is that after the game, Lucas went back to the hotel and he showered, and both Lucas and Gabe put on their University of Calgary tracksuits, and Lucas put on his medal. Like, I don't think he took it off for like 4 weeks after, you know? And so he's walking through Halifax with his medal. And so when this guy said, nice medal, man, he wasn't saying, wow, like, that's a really cool medal. He was saying, What kind of idiot are you? Wearing a medal. And then I looked at him and I looked at Lucas and I was wondering, like, how many milliseconds do I think it would take Lucas to end that kid? Like, not many. But it was neat because Lucas just looked at him and said, thanks. Because the moment was too sweet. You get what I'm saying? So I just sat there in Halifax with two of my boys, just celebrating and talking about life. And what's interesting is that it got me thinking about heaven. Because all series long, I've been trying to suggest to you that we all know there's got to be more. Like when we look around this world, and we look at things that are wrong, like hate, and violence, and sickness, and disease, and anxiety, and depression. We look at those things and we say, man, that's wrong. And we're right, they are wrong. But when you look at something and you say, that's wrong, what you're revealing by implication is that you long for what is right. In fact, I would even go a step further and say what you're longing for is a time and a place and a situation when the wrongs will be made right. And I don't think God put those longings inside of you by a mistake. There is a time, and there is a place, and there is a situation when the wrongs will be made right, and that's heaven. And even beyond that, there's moments that we experience in our lives, best of the best moments. You know what I mean? Where you look and go, man, it just can't get better than this moment. But what I find about those moments is that they come and then they go, and they don't completely fulfill those needs, those deepest needs inside of me. What they do instead is that they awaken them. Like those best of the best moments, so good. But what they do is they awaken in me a homesickness for a place that I've never been. And I really don't think that homesickness was put there by accident. I think we're homesick for heaven. And I think there's something true about me and there's something true about you, that so many of those best of the best moments, they involve other people. They involve relationships. They involve family. They involve friendship. Like for me, I look back when I was a kid growing up in Red Deer, Alberta, and every year my parents, we would drive out together to Okanagan Lake, and we would spend a week there with aunts and uncles and cousins, camping and barbecue and water skiing. And I remember thinking, man, this is the best of the best. And it's gone now, but when I look back at those moments, it awakens in me a homesickness for a place that I've never been. As a teenager, growing up in Red Deer, Alberta, and driving through the gravel roads in central Alberta with my best buddy in the whole world, Grant King. Listen to our radio, Pink Houses by John Cougar Mellencamp, and singing at the top of our lungs. And when I look back at those moments right now, man, I think that was the best of the best. And it awakens in me a homesickness for a place that I've never been. Remember the first date that I went on with Corinne? We were hanging around for a couple hours, and I started thinking to myself, man, she's beautiful, but she's amazing. And so I blurted out about 2 hours into the date, I'm like, you remind me of Grant King. That's what I said, and that's kind of a weird thing to say now that I look back, but she got it, and she said it's like one of the best compliments she ever received. But as the date went on, I started thinking more and more, I think I want to spend the rest of my life with her. Then when I look back at that first date, it was there and then it was gone. It was awesome, best of the best. But it actually awakens in me a homesickness for a place that I've never been. Or looking back about how I got to marry Corinne, and we had 6 kids, and watching those kids grow up and just being so proud. On December 30th of last year, our oldest daughter, Tori, got married to an incredible young man, Josh Wallace. What a week, by the way. What a week. So we finished our Christmas Eve services here, amazing, and then we had 3 days to get ready for the wedding. What a week. Sometime when Kurt and I speak together, we'll tell you about how hilarious that week was, but it was hilarious. One of the things that was unique about it is that there was an ice storm, like a day before the wedding, okay, which made the pictures really beautiful. You can throw up a wedding picture right now. See, that's beautiful, right? Isn't that neat? Look at that, snow okay, but it was a nightmare to prepare for that wedding. Everybody was getting stuck, and everybody was breaking down, and it was, but at least the pictures were nice, okay, so, but the ceremony was cool. I got to walk Tori down the aisle, and then I got to officiate the wedding also, which was neat. So Emma, our daughter Emma, was Tori's maid of honor. And then Gabe and Lucas, our two of our sons, were groomsmen for Josh. And then Bedza and Samuel, our two youngest sons, were ushers. Anyways, I'm officiating the wedding, and I'm going along, and I look up, and I see like 23-year-old Lucas and 18-year-old Gabe, these tough guys, and they got tears just streaming down their faces. It was just this moment, you know? And then the wedding ended, and Bedza and Samuel were doing their ushering things, and I don't know what I was doing, but our 4 kids, someone who saw it said they were all 4 of them crying, like our 4 oldest kids, Tori, Lucas, Emma, and Gabe. And they came together, and someone took this picture. And that picture is special to me. Gives me a full heart. I don't know what they were talking about. I don't know what they were feeling in that moment, but I can guess. Part of it is that they're sad about the end of an era. They look back at the fact that they all grew up as best friends. They fought sometimes, but they always had each other's backs. Played together. Loved each other. And then at the same time, I feel like they were looking ahead to a new era. And they thought it was going to be pretty cool also. Every time I look at that picture, I get a little emotional. There's this quote that comes to me from my grade 10 English class. There's this book that we read called The Jungle Book by Rudyard Kipling. And there's this little part of it. It says this: "Now this is the law of the jungle, as old and as true as the sky. And the wolf that shall keep it may prosper, but the wolf that shall break it must die. As the creeper that girdles the tree trunk, the law runneth forward and back, for the strength of the pack is the wolf, and the strength of the wolf is the pack." I like that. I like that. Now, I've been praying all series long that God would help us get a clear vision of the there and then so that we could be filled with hope in the here and now. And I think it's just so important to say that heaven will be a place of relationship, of family, of friends, of love. If you read in 1 Corinthians 15 and Philippians chapter 4, what you see is that we'll be resurrected, renewed, and restored, just like Jesus, and yet recognizable. So I want to talk about that for a second. Just like Jesus, we'll become more like Jesus. Do you know that Jesus died on the cross and he was resurrected? And after he was resurrected, he appeared to his friends, to groups of up to 500 people, and he was recognized. It's important because I think there's this concept sometimes that we're going to be these weird, ethereal, unrecognizable beings. No. You're going to be you, only more. And relationships are going to be incredibly important. Just look at the life of Jesus. Jesus stepped into human history to die for you, to rise again for you, to save you. Yes, that's true, but he also came as an example. He didn't just step into human history and then leave. He was born in a manger in a stable in a little town called Bethlehem. He grew up with a mom and a dad and a family, brothers and sisters. Isn't that amazing? Jesus had to listen to his mom. Jesus worked with his dad. And then at the age of 30, Jesus began his public ministry, and he gathered 12 friends around him. We know them as the disciples. And among the disciples even, there was the 3 closest friends. Peter, James, and John. Friendship and family was important to Jesus. And it will be important to you in heaven. See, I've heard somebody say before, you can't take it with you. Have you ever heard that in reference to heaven? You can't take it with you. That's mostly right, but it's partly wrong. There is one thing that you can take with you. The love and the relationships for your family and friends, you can take that with you. You will take that with you. I think there's an attack on our concept of the there and then. This ethereal view of heaven, where we all walk around or we're hanging around on clouds with harps, talking about pillowy soft bathroom tissue and Philadelphia cream cheese, playing harps and singing forever and ever. Honestly, I've never heard you play a harp, but I have heard some of you sing, and I'm not interested in listening to it forever and ever, to be truthful. But the picture that we get of heaven, when I see those with that concept of angels on a cloud playing a harp, I just imagine them with all this vacuous look in their eyes, a disconnected look in their eyes, a non-relational look in their eyes, where everybody is their own little entity playing their harp and singing their own little song. That's false. That's not the way heaven's going to be. It's not ethereal. It's not intangible. It's more real than anything that we could ever experience here. It's more tangible than anything that we could ever experience here. And I really believe that those best of the best relational moments you have, that's a little taste of heaven. That's a little taste of heaven. And when we love each other well and when we're kind to one another and we care for one another, we're practicing for heaven. Our friendship, our relationships are going to be more real, not less. I mean, if you grew up going to Sunday school, you might know that the first man and the first woman were Adam and Eve. God created Adam and Eve, and he put them in the Garden of Eden. It says that Adam and Eve were in the garden, and they were naked and unashamed. Naked and unashamed. Now that's an interesting concept, isn't it? Naked and unashamed. Physically, that's true. But spiritually, emotionally, it's true also. Did you know that? Relationally, it's true. Naked and unashamed. Do you understand what that means? It means that all their needs were perfectly met by God. That their value was completely established by God. That their worth and their security and their esteem were completely concrete and solid in their relationship, their unbroken, perfect relationship with God. And therefore, they were able to love each other completely and totally, naked and unashamed. I was telling you earlier about the first date that I ever went on with Corinne, where I said, "You remind me of Grant King." Somewhere after I blurted that out, I realized, oh no, she's incredible. And so I stopped the conversation. I said, "Corinne, I want to tell you who I really am." And I told her everything about me. Every stupid thing that I could think of that I had done, I told her. Because I wanted her to know the real me. And then she said, "Oh, well, let me tell you about me." And there's something so profound and so beautiful about that taste, that little glimpse of naked and unashamed. Do you understand what I mean? Like I can't think of anything greater between two people in this world to say, this is real me. I want real me to meet real you. Because so many of our relationships on this planet are, this is the me that I'm pretending to be having a relationship with the you that you're pretending to be. Do you get it? Or this is the me that I think you want me to be, and I'm going to have a relationship with the you that you think I want you to be. But what about this? Real me meets real you. That's naked and unashamed. That's a little taste of heaven. In 1 Corinthians chapter 3, some people call that the love chapter. The Apostle Paul says this, right now we know in part, but then we will know fully, and we will be fully known, naked and unashamed. So there's Adam and Eve just living the life, naming the animals, caring for the garden, adventure and growing together, in unbroken relationship with God and perfect relationship with one another. But then things went off the rails. If you grew up in Sunday school, you probably know this story also. At some point, Adam and Eve broke their perfect relationship with God. I told you last week, right, that the devil is going to try to steal your hope. He's going to try to steal your hope. He's going to try to steal your hope, and he always does it in three ways. Number one, he's going to slander God's name. Number two, he's going to slander God's people. And number three, he's going to slander God's place. It's always the same. And I said this last week, I'm not trying to be glib or silly, but listen to me. When you start to have thoughts, when you start to slander God's name, when you start to feel like, man, God's not great and God's not good, God's not sad. Going, oh man, like I thought you liked me. I just want you to like me. No. God mourns for you because the enemy is stealing your hope. So recognize the voice. When a voice comes to slander God's name, slander God's people, or slander God's place, that's the enemy stealing your hope. That's his playbook. He's been using it since the beginning. So in the Garden of Eden, what happened? The devil comes disguised as a serpent and says to Eve, first of all, the devil slanders God's name. He says, God's not good. God's not good. Right? Like there's all these trees in the garden he says that you can eat from, but why is he holding out on that one? What's he keeping from you? He's not that good. He's trying to keep that one tree. That's an awesome tree. That's the tree. That's the tree of trees, man. And he's holding out on you. He's not that good. And then he slanders God's name by saying, he's not that great. God's not that great. Because if you go and take fruit from that tree, that one tree out of all the trees they said don't take fruit from, you will be just like God. So what does Eve do? Sounds good. Takes a bite. Gives an apple. I don't know why I always pick on the apple, but we do. I actually don't even mind apples. But she gives an apple to Adam and eats it, and then God shows up. So they were naked and unashamed. But also now they're trying to cover themselves. So remember what the enemy does? He slanders God's name and then he slanders God's people. God shows up and says to Adam, what's going on? And what does Adam say? It's her. It's her. Eve is short for evil, God, it turns out, as it turns out. It's the chick. So now we're slandering God's people. And the devil's stealing our hope. And as far as God's place is concerned, well, Adam and Eve were banished from the Garden of Eden. It's interesting, by the way, this is a bit of a sideline, something just to think about. Nowhere in the Bible does it say that God destroyed the Garden of Eden. It just says that Adam and Eve were banished. So the Garden of Eden, in my opinion, is still kicking around somewhere in some realm. And when God creates a new heavens and a new earth, we're going to see it. We're going to explore it. But since that moment, since that day, relationships aren't everything they should be. So those rare moments, they're so rare. The real me meet real you. And slander entered the scene, and gossip entered the scene, and hatred and discord and violence and dysfunction. And gossip and backstabbing entered into human relationships. The best of the best relationships that we have here, that's a taste of what's to come. And when we love each other well, and when we care for one another, and we're kind to one another, you know what we're doing? We're practicing for heaven. So I talked about it last week, man. God's going to create a new earth, a new Chilliwack, a new Cultus Lake, a new Canada. We said, well, how many lifetimes would it take to explore Canada and see everything? I said, I don't know, but we will find out. We will find out together. We will explore together. We will adventure together. We will live in perfect relationship together. Oh, man. Talked about music in heaven. The music's going to be great in heaven. All right. No matter what your favorite music style is. It's just a taste of what's to come, unless it's country music. I said that last week and a bunch of people got mad at me. I had to say to one person, please, don't swallow your chewing tobacco, ma'am. I was just kidding. I'm from Red Deer. I grew up with country music. I was kidding. So I bring it up again just to make more people mad. I don't know, but the music's going to be incredible. Is everybody going to be able to sing good? I think we're all going to be able to sing better, but I still think there's going to be certain people that are gifted. You know what I mean? And it's just going to be awesome. People gifted at building and designing and creating and art and literature and exploration of all kinds. It's going to be incredible, and we're going to do it together. Talked last week about sports. We're going to play sports. It's not going to be about your ego or validating yourself. We're going to celebrate together. We're going to enjoy together. It's like playing with your kid, and you never let them win, but then all of a sudden one day, he or she is old enough that you don't have to let them win. They're just beating you. And what you don't do in that moment is trip them and concuss them, put them on the IR for 6 weeks, right? You just go, good for you, kid. Good for you. And you celebrate one another. Now, I really believe it's important that we don't miss this part of heaven. We're not ethereal with vacuous look in our eyes, disconnected. No, we're connected, more connected than you could ever imagine. Real me and real you, know and fully known. Those moments, the best of our relationships, that's a little taste. And when we love each other, when we care for one another, when we're kind to one another, we're practicing. I love what C.S. Lewis said. There's no ordinary people, right? You've never talked to a mere mortal. Nations, cultures, arts, civilizations, these are mortal, and their life is to ours as the life of a gnat. But it is immortals whom we joke with, work with, marry, snub, and exploit. Immortal horrors or everlasting splendors. This does not mean that we are to be perpetually solemn. We must play. But our merriment must be of the kind, and it is in fact the merriest kind, which exists between people who have, from the outset, taken each other seriously. No flippancy, no superiority, no presumption. So that person sitting behind you, beside you, do they matter? Oh, more than you could ever imagine. So when we talk about that, be kind. Be kind. Everyone you know is fighting a great battle. Is that a big deal? Oh, it's a bigger deal than you could ever imagine. When you choose to speak a word of encouragement for that person who really needs it, does it matter? More than you could ever know. When you take time out of your day for that person, it really, really matters. Parents, moms, dads, sometimes you wonder, man, I spend my life putting myself second so I can give these wingnuts an opportunity. Is it a big deal? Oh, more than you could ever imagine. Oh, no, it matters. It really, really matters. The best of our relationships here, man, that's a taste. That's a taste. And when we love each other, when we care for one another, when we're kind, we're practicing for heaven. A couple weeks ago, a bunch of us went to the hospital, to the Abbotsford Hospital, to visit Maddie Hardy, who's fighting cancer. It was the four amigos, of course. Emma, Maddie, Keely, and Cassidy. They've been together. They've been best friends for as long as any of us can remember. Corinne and me were there, and Tori and Josh, Brianna and Leah. Emma's boyfriend, Vigeli, was there. Maddie's mom or grandpa and grandma. Just a bunch of people who love Jesus and love Maddie, you know? And so we were there in the hospital room, and somebody said, let's go down to the lobby. Well, if you've ever been to the Abbotsford Hospital, maybe you've noticed that there's a big grand piano that sits in the lobby. And there's a big rope around it, and there's a sign that says, I'm paraphrasing, don't touch this piano unless you book it. Well, Brianna booked it. So we went down to the lobby, and Leah sat down at the piano, and she started to play. And then Brianna started to sing. And then we all started to sing. And I took a video. And heaven held its breath. It was weird because people kept gathering, more and more people. Some of them were singing and some of them were just watching. The way the lobby works in the hospital is it goes all the way up. And more people were gathering around on the different floors, and they were looking down, and heaven held its breath. Because people matter. And love matters. And family matters. And friendship matters. So we get to love each other. We get to care for one another. We get to be kind to each other. And I know something about that night. I'll never forget it. 1,000 years from now, 10,000 years from now, we'll still be sitting around talking about it. It's odd, too, because you know what we won't be talking about? So many of the things in this world that we hold on to so tightly and we stress out about so much and we spend so much time obsessing over. I'll end with this. Don't miss it. Don't you dare miss it. You pay attention to the people in your life. Don't miss it. You pay close attention to the people in your life. They are your life's work. They are your life's work. And when you love them, when you're kind to them, when you care for them, man, you're just practicing for heaven. You get to love them. You get to care, you get to pray. You get to walk together today, tomorrow, and forever. Let's pray. God, as we have been loved so perfectly and completely by you, may we love each other well today, tomorrow, and forever. In your name. Amen. God bless you guys. Have a great week.
Thanks for joining us. We'd love to see you at any of our 3 Sunday services held at Sardis Secondary School on Stevenson Road in Chilliwack, British Columbia. For more information, please visit southsidelife.com.